Hi, folks. Hal Levy at Payment.com once again. And for this conversation, I am joined by Bryan Lewis, CEO of Intellicheck. Welcome. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We're going to have a discussion here. We'll call it the ripped from the headlines discussion. We might sound like a true crime show, but we'll take it in a different direction. We're focused today on the data breach that is in the news as we speak. That's AT&T. 73 million customers impacted by a data breach, and certainly it begs a larger discussion on all sorts of things, not just data breaches, but the role of identity verification. So, with all that in front of us, let's jump right in. When we're looking at this particular data breach, give us a sense of what steps you believe. We'll use telecom right now, but in general, companies of all sizes, certainly companies that have sizable customer bases, what do they need to do to enhance data security and prevent breaches of this magnitude or any magnitude in the future?
Yeah, look, it's certainly something we look at all the time because the amount of PII we have going through our platform. Security is paramount, and it doesn't take a lot, oftentimes for people to get in. So I think certainly what we're seeing is how do we do technology and how do we do training, because so many breaches really happen because somebody lets them in. And I know in our company monthly we go through a training, and we even then send emails or texts or other things to our employees, trying to get them to click on things they shouldn't so we can, again, train them on what they need to be aware of. And then the other thing is, storing any kind of data, PII. We're certainly talking to a lot of companies that use, blockchain and pixelate the data, put it across multiple data sites so that even if somebody did get in, there wouldn't be anything that they could then use.
When we're also looking at this particular breach, well, passcodes are front and center, right? So one of the responses has been reset your passcode. And also to your point a moment ago, being vigilant and outreach are important. But when we think about where the points of vulnerability lie and where consumers are so dependent on the passcode because they've been around for decades, what is your thought about, what's your perspective about the state of the passcode? How passcodes maybe have a place, but need to be surrounded by different practices. And certainly we'll get into ID technology in a moment. But really, what is the role of passcodes, the vulnerabilities? What needs to be done with them right now?
But sort of say anything where you're doing two-factor, you've added certainly a level of security that's greater than one factor. So passcodes, passwords, all those things are important. I think part of the problem is people use the same numbers over and over, the same password over and over. And that's, I'm an AT&T customer. So I just went in and changed all my passwords, even though I use different passwords everywhere. To me, it just makes sense. And people need to know, do not use the same password or passcode or PIN numbers or anything across multiple systems, particularly if they have sensitive information, because once the bad guys get them, they're going and seeing where else can I make this work, right? They got your email address now, they have a password, they're just going to try every site they can.
Let's play devil's advocate, right? Let's assume the passcode's been taken and there's any number of other identifiable information that are specific to you or me. They're out there. The bad actors have them.
Yeah.
So there is necessarily the role of identity verification in a new light, aided by technology, and certainly to our discussion here, really one that enables companies and their customers to be aware of but sidestep the vulnerabilities of passcode. So what is the necessary philosophy governing advanced identity verification, even in a world where passcodes are still there and they've been co-opted?
Right. Well, the other thing too is, remember, it's not just the passcode that you have to worry about. The real issue in a breach of this size with this data is they're going to use that to steal your identity, right? And it's pretty cheap, right? I haven't seen what the prices are for this data, but all the studies that you see and people going in and looking at the dark web, to buy your name, address, email, phone number, social security number, anywhere from $10 to $20, depending upon your credit score, right? Higher credit score, the more value you have to the bad guys. The most expensive thing is buying the fake ID. And I just went online to some of these sites, and they're all, when they buy them in bulk, which is what they do because they're stealing tons of people's identity, it's about $50 now for a driver's license. And if you think about it, anywhere you go where you're looking to prove your identity, they're going to ask you for two things, your government issued ID and your social security number. Well, for $70, $80, I have all that. And now I'm going shopping, right? I'm going to go do everything from sell land, which we're seeing a lot of title fraud, buy a car, go buy a generator, things that I can easily resell. So I think what people have to remember, it's not just your passcode and what people might have been able to get into, say, your AT&T account. It's if you're one of these people that have had their data breached, you've got to really now be vigilant across anywhere credit can be issued.
Is there a role for regulatory agencies, not just to give a sense of where we are right now, what needs to be done to be protective and proactive. What do you suspect the regulatory landscape is going to start to look like to that point? What might the best practices start to look like too, from your point of view?
Yeah, look, I think it'll be hard. I think a regulatory agency would be hard pressed to push this through because it's really very much states are very different in how they look at this. The rules they have on data protection, facial recognition, all those things definitely they vary drastically from state to state. And there is no one common form of ID for that we could say, hey, you have to have this and be able to show this. We don't have a national ID in the US. So I think that the best practices are really coming from, the companies that are issuing credit or, the banks and all these things, or the social media companies that really need to make sure that it's you. So they're kind of driving, I think, innovation and the use, practices that make sense because they've got such a financial stake in this. Last numbers, reports haven't come out, but in 2022, there was $43 billion lost through identity theft and identity scams, right? And that was with just over 15 million people. So you see a breach like this with 73 million people, that's going to cause identity theft. There's just, the math says it. So I think that the companies, because they take such losses financially and reputationally, if they allow your identity to be stolen or your account taken over, they're really the ones I think are at the forefront. They're looking for the tools that work the best, that are easiest for their customers to use, because what every one of them says is they don't want to treat the good people like bad guys just to keep the bad guys out.
A lot of what we're discussing, I want to make the distinction here. The information that's been taken here may not be sensitive financial information, but it's certainly the data that is and can be and will be used to cobble together fake IDs,
Yeah.
which to your point a moment ago is what gets used to wreak financial havoc elsewhere.
Yeah.
Take me through an optimal strategy for a company of this size to address the immediate fallout, not just from a PR perspective, but from really an operational perspective. What does a company like AT&T have to do to re-examine the ways they identify their own customers,
Mhm.
separate the ones who are posing as legitimate ones down the line, but also to your point a moment ago, let the good customers to continue to exist, to transact, to not have the friction in place where they feel like they're being, let's say, thought of as risk or risky customers and may not want to stay.
Yeah. So look, we're talking to some of the telecoms now because they've got issues with somebody coming in and saying, "Hey, I lost my phone. I need a new one." Right. And they come in with all the identity papers that basically say they're me, but they're not. And now they've effectively swapped your SIM card. So now you have the phone number. And if you think about it, that's kind of scary because all the things that, reset your password, do this, okay, send something to my phone, I click on it, now I've changed it. So I get access to your phone or your email, I can change your whole life. So they're realizing that, oftentimes it was just thought, right, am I keeping people from stealing things, it is, I've stolen your identity through your phone, but now I'm really stealing your identity everywhere, because that's basically the ticket that allows me to change all those, passwords, PIN codes, whatever you want to say. So, I think that the telecoms and other companies are realizing that for access to sensitive areas, because everybody thinks about getting through a door, it's also logging into a system. It is making sure it's me before I do anything that hints of account takeover, like I lost my phone. So we're seeing more and more people are looking for identity validation. A number of ways they do it. Certainly you can do it through a government issued ID. If you're registered and logged in, you can do it by saying, store my facial vector, and I'm happy to log in with that. So that there are things that hopefully mean they're very sure that it's me on the other end and not a bad guy.
I want to stick on the telecom aspect here because it's we'll call it fraud of a different color. And I think you said a moment ago, the phone is basically the central point by which a lot of other things can happen. You take somebody's phone or the identity tied to that phone, and you can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Do you suspect, am I going too far afield here if we think that maybe since it's AT&T, you can start having people pose as official government people, official parties, AT&T representatives, all sorts of things. We're not just going to see the customer level
Yeah.
fake IDs. We're going to see official, theoretically authorized party
Mhm.
fake IDs. Will we see that as well?
Oh, I guarantee it, right? If there's a use for an identity, they're going to steal it, right? And there's plenty of uses now that are not just monetary. There's everything that's reputational. You've seen people who have had like social media accounts hacked, and people put up nasty stuff, and it takes a lot to prove it wasn't you. But now you've taken that reputational hit. So I certainly could see that, makes sense to steal people's identity just for the purpose of destroying their reputation. So yeah, I mean, more and more, no doubt.
With all of this that we've been discussing, and from your own perch with Intellicheck, you've certainly got the data in hand and the experience, and we spoken certainly payments with you, and the idea of the official government documents as being part of all that. What comes next? What have I missed that we haven't addressed? And when you're looking at the data breach of this size, calamity is part of it, but maybe there might be um I'm not going to say silver lining, but maybe there might be a positive end result of things like this. What comes next? What is the lesson learned? And from your thought, what changes?
Look, I think, whenever this happens, people look at all of their systems and tighten them up and figure out, it just makes you sit back and say, all right, we thought of everything. What vulnerability did we miss? So, these big high profile breaches, I think, make everybody up their game in terms of protecting data. But it also at the same time means that there is all that data sitting out there for quite a while. So then it also makes it so that people are upping their identity. How are we identity proofing people before we allow major changes, major purchases, moving money out of accounts, because again, let's go back to the phone, right? If I get your phone and I now have changed your passwords, say I've got your crypto wallet, let's move all that crypto out, right? I get access to your investment account, all those other things that, can be very substantial in terms of loss, and I think a lot of people forget how much is on their phone and why you really need to protect the phone. Serious passwords, and again, never the same one across apps.
Last word is yours. Is there anything that I've missed that we haven't addressed yet, or anything that we have addressed that you want to expand upon?
The only thing I tell everybody is, if it isn't this breach, it's one that happened in the past or one that's going to happen in the future. And you should have a credit monitoring, service there that you can get them for free. Just watch what's going on, over the years, starting way back when with the huge Experian one in 2018 through today. breaches happen all the time, right? So, and it's not just these types of things. There's also, driver's licenses, have been hacked. People have gotten into the DMVs. So all the information, right down to the exact number on your driver's license, right? That document discriminator, it's out there and it's available. So people need to be vigilant and diligent about watching, out for themselves. And those monitoring services, I think, are a godsend.
All right, so I'm sure we will discuss where we might be next time something happens like this, because as you pointed out, there's a certainty it will happen again. What the only thing can be changed is how we react and prepare for it. So, thank you very much for the conversation.
Thanks for your time.